Hi, I'm Katie Crane, and this is the Pilates Lounge. Hi everyone, my name's Katie Crane. I am the Pilates professional. Welcome to another episode of the Pilates Lounge podcast. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that I am super passionate about the movement of Pilates. Personally, I've taught Pilates for 18 years now. Well, my studio turns 18 years old this year. I'm currently organising a Pilates Expo, partly in celebration of 18 years of Pilates, but also I have decided to host or to curate a Pilates Expo in my community because I see, and you see, we are all seeing the language around what we call Pilates being really stretched at the moment. And don't get me wrong, I am all about growth and change, evolution, expansion, and even inclusivity, as much as that word really bugs me, inclusivity. And let me tell you, this is a little bit off topic, but I'm going to go there. The word inclusivity really bugs me because I don't think personally that being inclusive, including everybody into everything, is serving anyone. Can you imagine if every single person in the world loved vanilla ice cream exactly the same as every other person? Well, then we simply would not have so many different ice cream flavors to choose from. Being inclusive, getting everybody on board, doing the same, feeling the same, experiencing the same, it's not only not conducive to growth, but it doesn't make sense whatsoever. So I have learned through being in business for 18 years that in fact being exclusive or niching down or really knowing very deeply all about your ideal client, and we all want Pilates to be available to everybody, of course. It's not like we want to be nasty. We're not going to be the Pilates police and say, you're not allowed to practice this. It's not, being exclusive isn't about being a bully or being a snob or being mean. Being exclusive is knowing the language that your ideal client speaks so that you can very specifically and uniquely and with great personalization speak to the people who come to you. Because the people who come to you for Pilates probably are not looking at the Pilates studio on the next corner because you're not there. It's as simple as that. And I'm sure I've said it before in podcasts, in episodes. It's like when you go to the junk food corner, and on the junk food corner, there's KFC, McDonald's, Hungry Jack's, Red Rooster, Pizza Hut, and they're all serving people fast food, but whoever's going to Pizza Hut probably isn't going to Hungry Jack's, because both the food that is being served, but also everything about the experience in Pizza Hut is different to the experience at Hungry Jack's. Not that I'm condoning you go out and eat that stuff, but I'm just, putting it into perspective. All of those places can be on the same corner and they're all doing okay. Similar, there can be many Pilates studios and there is room for you. There is space for you because the language that you use, the experience that you create, the studio that you curate is unique to you, and in turn is a unique experience for your community. But when it comes to Pilates, and I'm going to specifically talk about reformer today because I'm seeing, and we've been seeing this for a long time, this is not new news. This is now old news, but if we don't continue to talk about this, then it becomes accepted. Because as things become mundane, as things become everyday, as we get used to seeing something, it's much easier for us to accept it. And I don't want that to happen. I don't want this industry that is serving people in such a unique, specific, and special way. I don't want that to be watered down so that it is just serving anybody and everybody, which is why I'm having this conversation with you. We are seeing this, and we've been seeing this for a while, happening in reformer classes specifically. But if we don't keep talking about it, if we don't keep bringing awareness to this topic, then it will water down our entire industry. So, what is she talking about? What am I talking about? I'm going to set the scene for you. At my studio, we have different types of services. So we have what I consider true Pilates. So true Pilates is using all of the Pilates apparatus or equipment, Wonder Chair, Cadillac, Tower, Reformer, the barrels, the arcs, using all of that apparatus within a small group or one-on-one setting. So to me, that's what Pilates is. And for forever, for a long time, that is what was understood what Pilates was. And then reformer became very popular, which is fantastic. Exercising on a reformer is super fun. Let's not deny that. We love getting on a reformer. Who doesn't love getting on a reformer? Partly what is great about the reformer is it's spring-loaded, so you can work against tension. It's a moving contraption, so there's this coordinated aspect to it. The way that it's set up with the springs and the levers and the pulleys and the foot bar and the carriage, it's giving our body so much tactile feedback from multiple areas all the time, whether your feet are in straps or your hands or your feet are on the foot bar, your hands are in the straps, your body or your hands or your feet are on the carriage, your part of your body can be on the floor. You're always contacting multiple parts of the body, which is giving your whole nervous system feedback. And the way that the machine moves, the way that the carriage slides up and down is quite a primal movement if you think about it. When you were in your mother's tummy, or when your mother or your carer was rocking you to sleep, then it's quite a primal movement. The reformer has that similar movement. And from what I see with people, unless they've got vertigo or some sort of motion sickness or some balance disruptions, most people enjoy the feeling of their carriage smoothly moving up and down. And I'm pretty certain that has a positive effect on our nervous system, that primal movement. So being on a reformer is an amazing experience. There's no doubt about it. People who leave a reformer class that is taught well, they cannot wait to come back to the next class. So our studio has reformer classes. People want them, and we have to cater to what the market wants. We cannot ignore what the market wants, even though if in my ideal world, clinical Pilates or let's not even, I only call it clinical Pilates because that's how our community can disassociate one from the other. But there's no comparison between true Pilates accessing all of the apparatus and a reformer class. True Pilates is really where the magic is. This is where we see and where we experience the many benefits that Joseph Pilates had imagined that other people would be experiencing. But reformer is out there, so let's not deny it. But also, as much as we must not deny it, let's not become complacent. Let's not just accept that this is what it is. Let's not just continue on with our own practice and think that we cannot play a part in maintaining the integrity of what Pilates is meant to be. So we have what we call clinical Pilates and reformer Pilates. They're also very, very much two very different avatars that come to those two services. Sometimes, very, very rarely, but sometimes people do crossover. Some people come to reformer and let's just call it clinical Pilates, just for the sake of putting them into two different baskets. So in our studio, some people do come to both. Some people come to the clinical Pilates because they love that one-on-one attention. They're really getting down to the nitty-gritty. They got eyeballs on them the entire time. They're not able to get away with anything. They really improve from the instructor being so A, hands-on, but B, giving them a lot of information verbally and by using the equipment for feedback. But the reformer classes are fun. The reformer classes are social. You definitely get a workout because you're never stopping and starting. In a reformer class, you're moving constantly. There's really no rest, whereas in a full multi-apparatus class, you'll often be moving from one piece of apparatus to the next, so you get a little bit of a break between. So when does the Pilates become reformer? Or when does reformer no longer be Pilates? This is really the topic of today's conversation. And I'm bringing this conversation to you really on the back end of an in-service that I held for our own staff and for our student instructors the other day. So we, as well as having these two different services, both clinical and reformer classes, we also teach reformer and mat Pilates certification. If you've been listening to me for a while, you already know that our certification is a 6-month in-person program. Of course, all of the curriculum is online, and I think that that's important these days because people want accessibility, and they want accessibility wherever they are. There's no doubt about it. Our attitude about learning has changed, and so the way that we teach our program has changed with that expectation. But the only way a student can truly learn how to teach Pilates is by working in person, in the flesh, in the real, with real bodies, being able to get their eyeballs, their hands on other bodies, and having eyeballs and hands and a mentor on them as they are learning. You simply cannot do this online. I don't care how good you are as a student, and I don't care how comprehensive the course is. I've been working in this industry for long enough, and I've seen many students come through and have employed so many different people. The only instructors who walk into the studio proficient enough to teach Pilates on a reformer or Pilates on all of the apparatus are instructors who have been certified with face-to-face teaching. Online learning is fantastic for further education. Online learning gives extra education, accessibility to you no matter where you are in the world, and it's a wonderful thing. But you need somebody with a heck of a lot of knowledge and a heck of a lot of history, and somebody who has seen in person many bodies to be able to really see the finer details in your own body so that then you can really learn. In any case, we had this in service in our studio because we teach reformer classes, reformer Pilates, And even when we teach Reformer Pilates, we are very clear to our class attendees, if they have not come to the clinical Pilates first, we are very clear to let them know that learning Pilates is a long game. You don't get to experience Pilates in the first 6, 10, 20 sessions even, really depending on the body. Everybody is unique. Everybody's understanding of their own body is very individualized, and everybody's history in movement is very individualized. But for most people, from what I see, from what I've experienced, if you're only going to Reformer classes, and let's imagine that the Reformer classes that you're going to are taught by somebody who has a lot of experience teaching, for me to really teach somebody Pilates in a group of 12 reformers in a class, I see them start to experience Pilates properly probably after a couple of months of coming, if I'm teaching them. Pilates people, just quickly, I'm looking for the next best Pilates instructor, a comprehensively trained instructor with at least 2 years experience. You need to be able to teach one-on-ones, semi-privates, individually tailored sessions using all of the equipment. You need to be able to teach a really fun, competitive reformer class, a tower class, and a mat class. Not only that, you need to be super passionate about the Pilates profession, because you would be working alongside me, the Pilates professional, at my studio in sunny Darwin, Australia, the top end of Australia, right up in the tropics, just a hop away from Southeast Asia. A great place to explore not only Australia, but a lot of the rest of the world. If you are this person, then I'd love to hear from you. Katie at thepilatesprofessional.com.au. Now, we're not just any Pilates studio. Not only do we offer both clinical types of Pilates and fitness Pilates, but we also have infrared saunas, ice baths, oxygen therapy, and other therapists working with us. So we are an entire wellness fit out, and we're really looking for the next person to fulfill the position to elevate the studio and really serve our community. So if that's you, no matter where you are in the globe, if you're willing to relocate, we even offer you a 2-bedroom, fully furnished house to get you started, and we can help with visas, but you do need to know whether or not you're eligible either for a holiday working visa in Australia or a 482, a special skills visa in Australia. I can help you with that. If you have any questions, reach out to me if you're really keen and if you're super serious. And of course, if you're a superstar, I can't wait to hear from you. Back to the show. If they're being taught by somebody who is relatively new to teaching, I see that those changes can take longer, and that's fine. That's to be expected, because you know what happens when we first start teaching Pilates is, regardless of how, you know, what our training is, whether you've done training using all of the apparatus, whether you're training using the mat or training using a reformer, to really have the eyeballs to be able to see the finer details in somebody and actually be able to pick out these tiny differences in people's bodies, it takes a long, long time. I remember I did a diploma, well, back in the day there was no diploma, but it was like diploma level. So I did like nearly 12 months of in-person training to become an instructor. And then I'd been teaching for maybe 2 years after that. And I went to an in-person workshop with Madeline Black. She was in Bali, and I lived pretty close to Bali, so I flew over to spend 3 or 4 days with her. And it was the first or maybe the second time that I'd been to any ongoing education. And she would be talking about the body in front of her. So there'd be a big group of us. We're all looking at the same body. I think the workshop that I went to with her was all about the sacrum. And she kept pointing out things in that person's body that she could definitely see, because she was talking about it as if it was as clear as day. And I had no idea what it was that she was looking at. I was listening to her. I was looking at the body that she was talking about, and it was almost like she was speaking a different language, or it was almost like she was looking at a completely different body to what I was, because I didn't have the trained eye for it. So ultimately, she was looking through a different lens that I was at that time. So when we first come out of our teacher training, we really come out knowing how to teach repertoire, but not having the language of who to teach it to. So then we end up teaching the repertoire in one language as if everybody in the room speaks in that tongue. Whereas in reality, everybody in the room speaks in their own tongue, and everybody responds differently to the words that we are using. And we don't see that. When we first start teaching, we don't have the eye for that detail. We're looking at everybody through with the same paintbrush. And it takes a while, and everybody would be unique, I would assume. I don't know how long it's going to take you, or how long it has taken you. But I know that it takes a while to be able to see things, because then I followed Madeline a bit because she was going back to Bali maybe every couple of years. So then I went to her next workshop, and I think it was on scoliosis, and she was speaking in the same way. We were looking at somebody with scoliosis, and Madeline was saying, "Can you see this? Can you see that?" And I could see it. And I could see everything that it was that she was talking about, or most things. Maybe I couldn't see everything. Most things I could understand what it is that she was talking about. But I was with a friend who was pretty newly certified, and at dinner time, my friend kept asking what it was that Madeline was talking about. And it was really then that I realised that I had trained my eyes. My eyes had started to discern these unique differences that we have in each body, and I was able to start to see that. So really, as a Pilates instructor, when we work with bodies in the flesh, because you have to see the body in all its different positions, and you have to see it not on a screen. Like, it's not, because on a screen ultimately we're almost flat. Well, you have to see it in real life to be able to see those little movements and stuff. And it was then that I actually realized how far I had come in my teaching in the 2 years. And straight away I was teaching pretty much full time. And I was seeing a lot of very complex conditions because there was no other Pilates where I was living. So everybody was coming to me. I mean, I was seeing spinal fusions and knee, hip replacements, all the things straight away. I was really thrown in the deep end. But I will never forget when I realized that was happening in my own eyes. And it continued to happen for many, many years. So when we first start teaching, say, reformer, we are just teaching repertoire to everybody. It takes time to be able to really not only modify for the person, for the people in the room, but to know when the modification is definitely appropriate for that person and when it's safe for them to advance the movement. It takes time for us to understand when somebody needs an assist. So an assist might be a block underneath the pelvis, or an extra TheraBand for feedback, or something to kneel on are all assists. It takes time for us to know that the person needs that without them having to verbally tell us, that doesn't feel okay on my knee, or that doesn't feel okay on my back. But eventually you end up being able to look through the lens of a professional, and there's almost like you have this educated intuition. Before somebody lets you know that they are ready to advance, or they need a modification, or they need an assist, you already know, you can already see, even if you don't realize that you're seeing it, You already see what it is that they need. This is Pilates. Pilates is being able to help somebody achieve complete coordination of the mind, body, and spirit. And the only way that we can, and as Pilates professionals, the only way that we can help somebody achieve that is by seeing many, many, many different bodies and by doing the work in our own body. You know, there's a saying that goes, you know, it takes 10,000 hours to become an overnight success, or it takes 10,000 hours to become an educated expert. Now, I would say, I mean, I've been teaching Pilates for 18 years and I would not call myself an expert, because the more that I know, the more that I realize that there's more to learn. So I think that I'd be very dubious to call myself an expert or a master at anything. The more we master something, the more we realize we are actually forever an apprentice. So this teacher training, getting back to it anyway, this teacher training was everybody, well, not everybody. So we've been teaching these reformer classes for a few years now, and it's seasonal. And I'm sure that things are seasonal for all of us in this space. At the start of the year, we have a lot of New Year's resolutionists. They want to take up Pilates. They start coming. A lot of them are coming like multiple times a week. So by the time this part of the year comes around, about mid-year, some people are really ready to advance the work that they're doing, and it's wonderful. So sometimes we change our class structure a little bit to cater to the people who have been consistent in their practice so that we can help them continue to advance. So the other day, I hosted this staff in service for our student instructors and for my staff so that we could play around with what I was calling a strength class. I did let my students know that there is a tipping point when what we are doing on a reformer, if we're adding too much into it, it is no longer Pilates. And that's okay. I'm not saying that you're not allowed to do not Pilates on a reformer. In fact, I don't really care what you do on a reformer. It's none of my business what you choose to do on a reformer. I'm just very aware as a properly trained Pilates instructor that it's very important for me to use appropriate language for our community, for our customers, for our instructors and for our staff, so that we are all very clear and very true, both to the Pilates method, but also in our marketing campaigns. So I taught a class where I added on small hand weights, anywhere between 1.5 kilos and 6 kilos. I know, 6 kilos, wild in a Pilates class, right? In a reformer class, I should say. And we were doing all very traditional Pilates movements, footwork, feet in straps, hands in straps, so Russian splits, control balance, scooter, up stretches, all traditional Pilates repertoire. But sometimes I was adding hand weights into it. And this is with staff, with people who know the exercises inside out. They not only have been practicing for a good 12 months, they've also been teaching for up to 5 years. And about halfway through the class, just by adding some hand weights, not onto every exercise, but just onto a few exercises, just by adding hand weights into the class, within 20 minutes, probably 25, 30 minutes max, there was 9 students, and I could only pick out 2 people who were still able to perform Pilates in that class because their body was fatiguing, their brain was fatiguing. There was so much more going on. Not only have you got your foot in a strap, but you've got a hand weight in the other hand. Maybe you've got heavier load on the reformer than what you're used to having. I could see very clearly that everybody in the room was a little bit discombobulated. And we continued with the class. It continued to be a very difficult class for everybody taking part. It was fun, there's no doubt about it. People were laughing and nearly falling over. It was hilariously fun. But at the end of the class, because I kind of figured that after doing the class, my staff and my student instructors were assuming that I would say, so this is what we're going to be adding onto our schedule, because there is a market for this out there. There is no doubt about it. There's this thing called Legree. If you've ever heard of a mega former, I know, like Megamind, sounds like a cartoon, doesn't it? Well, the whole concept is a little bit cartoon-like. The Megaformer is like a reformer, but it has an extra piece on it. I've never been on one personally, but I've just seen videos and photos of it. But ultimately, Legree, the difference between Legree and Pilates, I would say, is Pilates is all about attaining complete coordination of the mind, body, and spirit. We know that. This is what Joseph Pilates shared with us. This was one of his legacies. Pilates is all about mobilizing all the joints, all the major joints. So think shoulders, hips, knees, spine, in as many different ranges as those major joints are capable of moving within one session. And Pilates is really about whole body systemization. So I talked about the mechanism or the mechanistics of some forms of movement. Pilates is not designed to be mechanistic. So we're not looking at the body as levers. We're looking at the body as an entire system, which means when you're using one hand, you're often using the opposite foot. You're mobilizing the spine through flexion, extension, lateral ranges, rotation. You have a good understanding of body position in general. We are improving coordination and working both on stability and mobility in the same session. Pilates really, it aims to improve proprioception, so your understanding of where your body is in space. And it does that through mindful movement. So, and of course, there is also the concept of breath, which we bring into all of our classes. So Pilates is all of those things and more. Flexibility, stability, mobility, strength, all the things. Whereas Legree, instead of mobilizing the body in as many different ranges with as many different joints as possible within one session, within your capacity, and getting your muscles to work within their full range, Legree really would maintain the spine in one position. So it would maintain a lot of flat back, say, a lot of flat back, a lot of sagittal plane movement. So think running, walking, swimming, sagittal plane movement, and loading up in that movement. Legree is adding load to those joints and really focusing on, and of course the reformer or the equipment, the apparatus does this anyway because it is spring loaded. Legree is very much about progressive load, which the reformer does that anyway. So say if you've got the reformer in the home position and then you're pushing the reformer out, as the reformer springs stretch, as they're getting pulled into tension, that is progressive load. But Legree really takes that up a notch by adding on hand weights and quite often adding on heavier hand weights, so 8-10 kilo kind of weights. But of course, if you're adding on hand weights to something like scooter or Russian splits or the splits, the skater, then that challenges the proprioceptors differently. It's much more of a balance challenge. And so if you're going to do those types of things, it's much harder than to be able to mobilize the spine or change the direction of the spine. So, which is why you'd end up maintaining the neutral or maintaining the flat back while you're progressively loading with weights. So my point is, at what point does a reformer class not become Pilates? I think that it's probably at the point when we start to add on too many toys. And in particular, when we start to add on the extra load. Because once you add on extra load, it's very, very difficult to mobilize the joints in all different directions. It becomes very difficult to successfully mobilize the spine in different directions. And of course, remember, Joseph Pilates once said, you're only as young as your spine. It's not that those movements are not important and beneficial, but they're just not Pilates. So it's not, and on the other spectrum, it's not that Pilates is the be all and end all, but it is important that we understand what it is that Pilates is, and we use the language appropriately with our clients. So when we teach, and just to let you know, I am adding on a strength class to our reformer schedule. We do not call it Pilates. It simply is not Pilates. It's a reformer strength class. So we are adding on some small hand weights to a reformer class, and we will be maintaining neutral body position a lot of the time, and working a lot in the sagittal plane, because this strength is important and this strength is functional. It is not Pilates. So we need to actually be doing both. And that's why we're adding on the strength class, is because people want to come to your studio. People want to come to our studio. This is where people come for their health and fitness. Pilates is not the be all and end all. Pilates is not the only thing that people should be doing. People should be doing more strength training, especially if we are working with women and elderly, aging people. Strength is very, very important. In fact, we have a gym out the back of our location. So a lot of our people go to the gym. They'd go and do their heavy weight training, their heavy loading at the gym. They work in, single ranges in the joints. So, bend and extend, that's it. Not a whole lot of rotation of the joints. Then they come to us to improve their joint health, improve their mobility, improve their stability, because we're looking at the finer details, so that then when they go do their heavy loading, it gives them a lot more power and endurance and control in what they're doing. I want you to consider this when you're teaching, because I know this is what happens when you run out the gate as a Pilates instructor. You run out the gate with however many exercises it is that you have learned in your certificate. Say you've learned around about 80 odd exercises in a reformer certificate. I'd like to think that you go away with at least something like that. By the time you go out and teach, and already straight away you are seeing all these different exercises on top of the repertoire that you've learned that other people are teaching. You're seeing magic circles, therabands, chi balls, Pilates balls, foam rollers, hand weights all come into class. It's exciting. It's like, no longer is it just vanilla ice cream. We're looking at a rainbow. We're looking at the rainbow flavors of ice creams. And heck, while you're at that shop, you might as well try every single flavor, right? But the thing is, things don't need to get complicated. When somebody comes to your Pilates class, maybe they come 2 or 3 times a week max. I mean, sometimes people do come more often than that, and that's fine. But, 2 or 3 times a week, you could teach the same class to them probably about 10 times before they realize that you're teaching them the same class. And in fact, you could teach the same class to somebody for 2 years and still continue to gain momentum, because you're teaching them the finer details. You're teaching them, these nuances that Pilates offers. I'm always going back to the basics with people. I've got people that have been with me for 18 years, and we're still teaching footwork, and we're still teaching footwork without a Chi-ball. You don't need props in Pilates to be able to teach Pilates. Pilates is what it is, minus all the extra add-ons. You don't need to add Smarties to the ice cream. But what I see is a newly qualified Pilates instructor is much more likely to advance their clients than a seasoned Pilates instructor. And it's because you don't have the lens. It's because you're seeing everybody in the same lens, because you're seeing everybody being painted by the same brush. You haven't realized that person is a watercolor and that person's an acrylic and that person's a photograph. You're seeing everybody as if they're exactly the same. And so you, as an instructor, get bored teaching the same repertoire. But once you actually gain the eyesight and gain the lens to be able to see people as individuals within the class, then you will feel like you've got to advance people, or you will feel like you need to add a ball onto the class because it's boring. It's not boring for your clients, it's boring for you, because you're not yet trained to see those unique, individual, beautiful and succinct aspects of both human nature and the human body. So the best thing that we can do as Pilates instructors, is to be very clear in the language, in our marketing, be true, tell the truth. The truth always matters. If it's not Pilates, let somebody know. It doesn't mean that they can't come to it, but let somebody know. If you're doing Reformer Fitness, call it Reformer Fitness. Please don't call it Pilates. If you're adding 1 million props on, know that at some stage, as you start to teach better, you don't need the props anymore. And also, as your client starts to feel the work more, they don't need the props anymore either. So sometimes the prop will be used as an assist. So for example, say if you're doing footwork and somebody is really struggling to understand where their feet are meant to be on the bar, maybe you could pop a ball between their ankles or between their feet, or you could even pop a TheraBand around their ankles so they can press out on it. So sometimes a prop will be an assist for extra tactile feedback. But once somebody is truly doing Pilates, and once you are truly able to teach Pilates, you don't need all of the fandangled stuff. Food for thought. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. My name's Katie Crane. I am the Pilates professional, and today, where I live, it is Fireworks Day. So I don't know about what you're going to be doing today, but I am literally about to go buy a whole lot of fireworks. I know that some of you will be absolutely beside yourself to think that we're doing fireworks, but where I live, it's almost like somebody said, it's like the last bastion of hope for freedom. Sometimes I feel like our life is so regulated and so controlled. We certainly try and live a life that we have as much autonomy and freedom of choice as what we can. So we are going out to buy our fireworks, and we're going down to the beach to set them off. Don't worry, we always take a rake and we clean them all up as well, so don't freak out at me. But I hope that you're doing something super fun. Make sure you get out in the world. There's some crazy stuff going on out there, but if you stay centered, if you stay grounded, and if you practice your Pilates every single day, when you have complete coordination of your own mind, body, and soul, you can regulate your emotions, you can regulate your response to the world around you, and remember, that will have a ripple effect throughout the entire world. So go and practice Pilates today if it's the one thing that you do. Love you guys. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's Katie Crane. I'm the Pilates professional, and this is the Pilates Lounge podcast. See you soon.